Thank you for joining us for another episode of Talk Talks, sponsored by Photographer Entrepreneurs Association. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the association, go to photographerentrepreneur.com to learn more about photography business resources, templates, training, and support. We'll see you over there. All right, welcome back. We are here with another interview, and today we have Rudi Marten. Hi, Rudy. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, guys.
Hey, it's great seeing you.
Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Awesome,
Thanks.
awesome. So for those of you who don't know Rudi, let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to dive right in and talk a little bit about business and what they do, because what they do is pretty amazing. So when Rudi graduated high school, he swore he would never go into photography. That's a true story.
Yep.
Growing up in a home studio, Marten Photography, he felt his parents worked far too much for far too little money. After working in marketing and starting a graphic design business in Seattle, in 2008, Rudi was begged to return and help the studio develop an online and social media strategy. With a change in business practices and marketing philosophies, the studio became more profitable than ever. In 2011, Rudi committed to taking over the family business and inspire the Martens' 10,000 square foot studio in downtown Billings, Montana.
Wow.
And he has been called the master of marketing and ideas. So we are so excited to have you on, Rudi.
Hey,
How do you have the time? We're gonna have to like double the time on this
I
interview.
know. So why don't we just start off by you talking a little bit about your background, your experience and expertise, and maybe some things about your business that not that many people know about.
certainly. So the intro you gave is so true. I swore I would never go into photography because we never had weekends. We never went on vacation. And so I was like, that's not the life I want. I wanted to I really envisioned myself as an executive in an ad agency or something. And I fled to the West Coast to see what life was like out there. And then came back to the business and told my parents, don't get used to me because I'm going to be leaving in a year. And one thing led to another thing. And I never felt led to go back to Seattle, let alone what was I going to do? Because I had brought my graphic design business with me. I have a graphic design and marketing degree from Pacific University outside of Portland, Oregon, and really was getting involved and felt led to be a part of the business again. And we hired a business coach to help us in about 2013, 2014, and again, took another significant increase in our business. And all of a sudden, my interest in this became viable because on a business background that I had was, okay, how can we make this profitable, but still do what we enjoy doing? And how can we, for my parents, fund retirement? How can we do health insurance? How can we purchase new cars? How could I live the life that I kind of wanted as an executive in the ad agency, but in the photography world as a studio owner? And so that's really the approach I take, is that while this is an art and a craft that I appreciate and love, and I am a photographer, I do shoot, but first and foremost, it has to be profitable. And how can we make it work for us in the future? Because it's not just one owner. There's now three owners, as us three Martens, where my parents had it for 30 years, and then I have taken the reins and envision it for the next 20, 30 years. So.
So, but it had to become something that you had that mind shift of like, no, I'm not going to be part of this business.
Yes,
so
it
was
was
an incredible shift there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I can totally relate because I'm a daughter of a doctors, and they're entrepreneurs, and I was like, I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. I want a 9-to-5 because, again, same thing. We just the struggles, but you somehow you're called back to it.
Yeah. And even to Montana too, because I wanted out of rural Montana. Well, the studio was 40 miles out into the country. So you can envision. In fact, Gary Box always makes fun of us. The first time he ever visited, he goes, on their directions to their studio, it actually says, turn off the highway onto a gravel road. He's like, guys, it's actually a gravel road that they're having people drive on. And so I wanted a city life. And so when I came back here and saw the culture of Montana changing to adapt some of those things, restaurants, breweries, arts and culture like that, I started to fall in love with Montana again, and then picked up the studio, moved it into downtown Billings, which 86% of our business was driving from or through Billings to get to us. So,
wow.
So I just a question, curiosity, I've always had those. So you have the family business that had what their version of a successful model was. Was it a hard sell to be like, hey, I know you've been doing this for 30 years, but I'd like to flip it upside down and do something totally different? Or was everybody exposed at the same time to this new opportunity?
It wasn't, because for a whole year I said, I want to immerse myself in all areas of the business. So I was my dad's assistant in the camera room. I was then in charge of all marketing. I learned how to retouch. I learned how to print, because we have a full lab in our studio. I went through all of those elements to go, is this really what I want to do? Because there's going to come a time that my parents won't be the key shooter, won't be the key salesperson. Is this what I want to do? And from that, then I think they saw that investment of time and understanding, that they're like, okay, where do you see this vision going? And when I said, I want to take over, but when I do, I'm going to move the studio, they were like, what? Why did you look at that? We're the studio in the country. And I said, I think we do better as the studio in the city. And so it was really a trust that they put into the vision I had. And I'm very blessed, one, in that I get to come up behind a very well-established photographer in our community and in the nation as their educators also. Yeah. But two, that my parents have said, okay, here you go. We're here with you, but now you're going to steer the ship. Where do you want this to go? So I'm blessed in both of those realms.
Yeah,
that's really wonderful.
So from the outside, some people would see that like, oh, that you're lucky, but at the same time, it's like you also have a weight that you're carrying.
Yeah, they're very big shoes. In fact, we were in this space for a year and a half before I actually started shooting. And my dad and even our business coach was like, is this going to work? Because if he doesn't shoot, this isn't going to work. Oh, yeah. And my dad had double knee replacement surgery in March, a year and a half into this. And that was when I got kicked off the cliff, and they were like, we need you to fly because we have 2 sessions today. And he just went in for surgery on his knees. And so I did. I was sweating bullets, and I'm like, these are big shoes to fill. And I had done everything. I had been, as the assistant, my dad really had said, you're in charge of posing and lighting. So I was doing all of that already. It was just now picking up the camera and being the point person. But it is, and I've really tried to honor that. In fact, I have said that I want to shoot to look identical to my dad, that when someone comes in, they can't go, oh, well, Rudi shot that and Clark shot that. So that when they come in, they're like, no, I don't want Rudi, I want Clark, because he's better. And he is a master photographer, but I'm shooting to where no one can tell the difference. Right. And that's the high standard that I kept for myself.
Oh, that's great. I think it also is reaffirming to know that success is duplicatable. So just like you taking it over, you're modeling the successful rituals and systems that are in place. So somebody that's aspiring, that's new, they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. And that was a little bit of a difficulty for my dad to kind of understand, because it's always been Clark is the master artist. Everything is revolving around him. Whereas my future goal and my business model is to have several photographers underneath me as we continue to grow and expand, where he was just always the one. Mm-hmm. And that's been a difficult thing, but something he's worked with me on. And I'm already training another photographer to be our children's photographer. But I said the bar is set high because I need you to shoot at this level so that no one can tell the difference, and we'll continue to grow and expand.
It's exciting to hear this, because I'm reading between the lines, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but again, this is part of your vision to say, this is not what I wanted as a child. This is, if I'm coming into this, I want to be able to have the weekends with family. I want to be able to go on vacations. And that means you do have to go beyond the small business owner mentality.
Exactly. Because first and foremost, what I've learned is I am an entrepreneur. I love building businesses and expanding and all that. Working inside the business is not my greatest strength. I flourish, and our business flourishes when I step back, take a bigger vision view, and say, okay, this is where we're going. And then my crew is like, okay, we're following you. And so for me, as much as I love photography and shooting, and I just set a goal for myself to become a master photographer, as much as I do that, when I'm in the camera room, in the back of my mind, I am saying, okay, for the next hour, 0 marketing is going to be happening, and 0 strategy is happening, because I'm working in the camera room right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome.
So throughout this whole process, you've probably encountered a lot of challenges. Can you maybe share with us maybe one of your biggest challenges in the business and how you overcame that?
My my biggest challenge, and I only recently started sharing this, was I had horrible social anxiety, and to the point that I could not speak in front of people. My parents, I think it was the first or second year I'd come back and was in the business with them, they drugged me to imaging and were like, you're going to speak on stage with us and you're going to talk about marketing. And I was like, and I started scheming in my head, okay, I can be sick and I'll be sick, and then I won't have to do this. But at the same time, like, but if I'm sick, then for the next 4 days, I don't get to have fun with all the other activities. And so I was trying to figure this out. And when I got up to speak, I got a drink of water and my hand was like this, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. And I had to put it down. And it came to this point. I was with a girlfriend and we went to an art walk at a show, and I didn't know anybody in the room except for her and her brother, and they knew several people. And I kind of had a panic attack, an anxiety attack. And I was living with my parents at the time, and I drove home. It was 11:30 at night. I went and woke them up and I said, I need to figure out what to do. I need to fix this, because for me to be the person I want to be and to live the life how I want and to have a business like I want, who I am right now is not going to be able to do that. And so that was a big thing for me to recognize, and then to seek help and go after that, to where now people are like, you had anxiety? And I'm like, yeah, I still do every once in a while, but I learned to deal with that because it was not going to allow me to get to where I wanted to be.
Wow, that's exciting for me to hear, because photography in general, one of the allures is that I think it pulls a lot of introverts into the industry, you know, but I think people feel like that's like permanent, that you can't work on it, you can't learn tricks and techniques and overcome and work on this. So just to hear that you say that, especially with you guys being at the level that you're at, and to be open, and thank you for being open to share that, because the more that we talk to others, the more that they're traveling that similar type of road.
Exactly. And there was a local article that they were talking about me, and they'd asked a similar question, and I shared this, and I was like, well, they're no big deal. And so many people then came and said, thank you for sharing that, because I have a similar struggle, and now I know that I can, there's a way to fix or to work through it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really why I shared, is for people who maybe struggle with something like that, and to understand that you can change to become who you want to be. We're all given that freedom and that ability to change how we think and what we do to accomplish what we want.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. There's a saying I always say, you can start over at any time. So you have that ability to do it, and you make a decision just like that. So yeah.
Thank you for being open and sharing that, because depending on what research you hear, public speaking's up there, like the number one, up there with like death. You know, it's like,
and I've learned to work with it. I mean, even if you were to go back 8 years, and the idea of even doing this with you guys I would have been in a fetal position for 2 days coming up to this. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And let's just go. Right. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great.
All right, so let's talk marketing, because that. And I know we can go on and on, but can you talk to us a little bit about some of your best marketing strategies, and give us, just open up that knowledge that you have.
I love marketing because to me it's a game. It's the game of business, and it's won by how many people we can get into the studio, and then what they want to spend with us. And so each morning I come down and I'm like, okay, how are we going to win today? What didn't we do right in yesterday or last week that we didn't meet our numbers? And then what can we do to meet them tomorrow and the next day? So our biggest change in growth in the studio in the last 8 years has been switching things from hope marketing, where you send out a postcard or put up a Facebook ad and you just hope people call you, to now it's all lead generation now, to where people are raising their hand saying, I'm interested in what you do. So we have a full call center, and by full, it only has one person in it. But her only job is to do outbound phone calling of all these people who have raised their hand. And then if you could see in the other room, there's a whole wall of just numbers. And so we forced ourselves to learn how the language of business works, which is by the numbers. And for a creative person, that is so foreign and that's so difficult to get your head wrapped around. It took me probably a good 2 years of understanding that and kind of just beating my head to keep moving forward, as much as I was like, I don't understand, but I know we have to get there. And now it's to the point where I'm like, okay, I see that we're short on this and we didn't meet goals here, and going that direction. So that's the boring part of marketing. That's been the biggest thing, but that's been so empowering and helpful that all of our other marketing is built on that foundation. When you take a step above that, the next piece would probably be relationships. People do business with people, not with businesses. And we see this so much in social media of people sharing personalities and behind the scenes. And that's very, very powerful, that people then connect and associate with those people. So many books that I've read and in fact, you can go back all the way into the late 1800s where it's talking about relationships, but now with social media, it just has exploded on top of that. But you have to do it with purpose. And then when you're talking relationship on one-on-one as you're photographing people and then presenting and selling to them, the same thing is there too. We're here to help them, to answer their questions, to move them along. And then it's up to them of what they want to buy and all of that. My mom has always said, pretend that it's your grandma Laura on the other side of the table or on the other side. How would you talk to her? How would you communicate with her that would move her along? And so that's really, those are my two things, is business is run by the numbers and so is marketing. And then all of our marketing is based on relationship building and pulling people into that conversation with us and working them lower and lower into the funnel until the point that they purchase from us.
You're talking our language.
I know.
So, but again, it's stuff that people don't talk about. So when I was in the real estate world, we knew when I hired an agent, I knew how many agents I had, how many would be unproductive, how many of them would churn and leave. Yep. And out of that number of people, how many of them would be very successful. So I knew I'd recruit so many people to hit my numbers, to do exactly, because numbers just play out. So as much as people don't want to look at the numbers, like especially having an outbound call system, which really, really cool, which I think it's exciting because you're one of the first people that talk about it, because it's like that, again, that non-sexy part that nobody wants to really chat about. But just by changing like one script or one technique, because you're measuring your metrics, you can see an immediate impact. And then all of a sudden, you might not have to do as many outbound calls. You might have to do as many ads and still get the same result. Like you can actually work less because now you're paying attention to where the business is. But you get, sometimes as people are attracting the people, but maybe in their presentation, they fail. And it's like, wow, if they just improved like this one piece, the conversions would be double. And they would have to attract, they could sit down with half as many people and get the same result, you know? So it's fun to hear. It's not as sexy. Yeah, I know, but it's. And
we've had, I jokingly call them my call girls because they've always been women who are doing it. So I'm like, I got my call girls. And I think we've had about 7 or 8 different ones, and some were amazing. Brittany, who we have right now, is incredible. Others haven't been as good. But I really give them, or have always given them, the freedom of what do you want to change in the script, because you're the person on the front line. And it has been, as we trained ourselves and learned from other people who were doing this, their system of doing it was a little bit more forward and aggressive. And don't leave a message on the first call and go right for the booking. And what we learned was our numbers were going down. And I said, what's the problem? And right away, we're like, that's not the personality of us. We're about building relationships and seeing how they're doing before we ask for the sale. And so we switched that up, and all of a sudden our numbers went back up. And in our cell phone world, if you don't leave a message, people get pissed off going, who's this number that keeps calling? And so we're finally like, you know what, we have to start leaving messages. And so it is, you just tweak and keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's great that you guys know that dynamic and that you're doing it, because I think it's a conversation that needs to happen more often. Because once you know your numbers, you then are in control of your business.
Exactly. And we do between 270 and 300 portrait sessions a year, which is kind of a lot for having basically 1.5 shooters. But I know to get to that, I need just over 2,200 leads to come in that will eventually convert into those sessions. So while Brittany's job is to book by day to fill those schedules, my job as marketing is, okay, I need to ensure that I get 2,200 leads to her over the next year, that she can ensure that calendar gets full.
Right, that's great.
And what are some of the ways that you get those leads? I know you said a lot with relationship building, but what are some ways that, just to get people thinking about this?
No, totally. I totally, thank you for asking. Because this is more the how-to kind of. So we have displays around town all over with like similar businesses with lead boxes. We go to specific expos and trade shows in our community that have the type of people with discretionary income who are wanting nice things.
Right.
And we give quite heavily to auctions and fundraisers because these are people with discretionary income that they can invest in portraits and help out this nonprofit also.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent.
So that, again, right along the line. So you're not trying to appeal to everybody in the marketplace, because you guys definitely have a certain price point, and we've seen, through the years, the studio tours and stuff online. And it's a beautiful, incredible gallery and vibe and feel that you have. And you really are pre-positioning people ahead of time. Like, you're definitely like an in-person sales type studio. Like, you're
very much
right out the gate, see printed work. They're not just looking at digital files. Like, you give them the full experience. So,
exactly.
So you are going after that one client that's in that's with that.
Whenever we can bring people into the studio, immediately they're like, oh, this is different than any other photographer I've heard about. And then we quickly move from, well, it's not just photography, but it's portrait art. And if you've ever seen our work in the past, we really do try and blur the line between just a picture versus a piece of art. So everything has digitally enhanced edges and creativeness done to it, so that it's very much unlike anything else they've seen in town.
Good. Separating you from the competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
So for a photographer that's just starting off with their business, what kind of advice would you give them?
Good question. I would say, having learned what we've learned, I would hire a business coach, because most photographers get into it because they were given a camera for their birthday or at Christmas, or grew up with one, and then people start saying, you take really good pictures. Would you take this of my kid? Would you do this of my senior? Would you take my whatever wedding and all that? And so they slowly immerse themselves in it. And then, as Michael Gerber says, then the entrepreneur seizure happens, and you're like, you're right, I am a great photographer. Let's open up a business. But we have no clue how to run a business. We just know how to take great pictures. And so I would seriously, I would very much consider a business coach to help you learn and understand the business side of this, so that it doesn't become something in 2 or 3 years that you're like, I can't believe I've gone this long. This is a headache to me. I hate this. And all of these frustrations, and you're double mortgaged and all this in debt, and just avoid all of that and hire someone right away who knows how to run a business.
That's great advice, because I think everybody's so caught up in the shiny object syndrome in our industry, and people that are really making the money are the ones that focus more on mentorship and one-on-one coaching. Because you guys do it, we do it. Like, we're teaching it, and we go to these conferences, and if you're doing a pre-con, you definitely have like more time to share with people. But in general, in 90 minutes, I can give you as much as we can, but there's so many gaps. There's so much. Yeah. And people hang on that.
Yeah. And even people often think, oh, I've seen their studio. They always play at this level. We're constantly learning all the time. Right. To look at us and say, well, life is grand. You never have any hiccups. You never have angry clients or bridges that are on fire or anything. That happens all the time. What happens is you just learn how to deal with it, to where it's not the sky is falling like it was 8 years ago when this would happen. We're now like, oh, we can handle this. And you just work through it.
Yeah, that's great. And you gave a quick reference to Michael Gerber. That's our one of our number one books that we I used to give it as a requirement to all my agents when I hired them years ago. So we love that book.
And I love what you say about coaching too, and finding a coach that really understands you and asks questions about you and your market, because again, learning what works well for you and your market might be different than someone else's market, and how you could take those skills and techniques to apply it what's best for you.
Absolutely, because when it comes down to it, business is business, be it a photographer, a chiropractor, an online business of some kind. Business is business, and the language of business is the same. But as we teach and coach other photographers, it's not to become a carbon copy of the Martens. It's to be, who do you want to be? What is, as our business coach told us, and who's now our partner in coaching, what's the life that you want? Now let's create the business underneath it that is going to support that life.
Right.
Instead of most photographers, this is my business and my life, and they can't be pulled apart at all. It should be, what's the life you want? Now let's create something that supports it. And that can be a meeting level. That can be $1 million studio. That can be, you know what? I just want to make $150,000 this year and work 20 hours a week. That's awesome, because that's what you want to do, and let's help you do it.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love that first, and I love that visual too, where it's not like you have that foundation underneath. So love that.
And what's really cool is, again, when you come back to the numbers, when you know your numbers, you can do very specific tasks that will get you a duplicatable, predictable result.
Oh yeah.
And then you can control if you want to take like a 6-week vacation every year, or you want to take a 6-month vacation every year, because you know your numbers and the dynamics, you can actually purposely do very specific activities that will draw you that income in that business to be able to give you the freedom to do things like that.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Awesome. All right. So I have a fun question for you now.
Okay.
If you were to relocate to a brand new area and no one knew who you were, and you had $1,000 in your business bank account, what would you do with that money to market yourself?
Can I take good pictures already, or am I not a good photographer?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You're like, crap. Do I have to buy a camera?
So the first thing what I would do is I would search out as many nonprofits as I could to get into their auctions, because that's free. Doesn't cost any money. The next thing I would do is start to find out who the community influencers are. And that's usually going to be found by getting involved in local organizations, be it Rotary Exchange, especially if you can find something that has women in it, I would go after that too. And those are the first few things I would do. And the other thing, which is a recent thing that I have started playing with and seen other businesses doing, is I would bring people in for invitational photos right away, create wowing images, and then reward them with product based on how much they can spread the word in social media. So if we can say, you know what, brag about this for the next week, and we're good, and then at the end of that week, I'll give you this or whatever. I would be doing those things.
That's great.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about nonprofits for you, because we talk a lot about nonprofits, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do with that too.
I love nonprofits. One, because they're helping other people, and two, they're an extension of a community to help people who normally would not be helped because either local government doesn't have the resources or the time or know how to do. And so these are people with true hearts of giving. And so when I say go talk to nonprofits, I actually do sit down with their executive directors and I say, I want to help you raise money. And how can we work together to do that? And they rarely get conversations like that where a business comes in, because most businesses have been hit up by people asking for donation. So I really just try and open it up saying, I want to give as much as possible. So ask me for everything and I'll see if I can give it to you. And so when I've done, as going with that, I now have nonprofits who come to me saying, we hear you're really good at raising money. Can you help us? And I'm like, sure, let's sit down. Let's have lunch. Let's have coffee. Let's brainstorm what we could do. Now, I'm not giving the farm away for us. I'm giving a portrait session with portrait credit. And my goal, obviously, is to create portraits that they love so much that they want to buy more. But that's certainly a risk I have. So if I ever get someone who's like, well, you're just in it for yourself, I can say, well, I can understand how you see that, but I also am taking a risk by offering the portrait credit, and they have no obligation to spend more if they don't want to. Right. But my real goal is to help raise you money. And I'd love to raise, and then I throw out a number, and they're like, okay, let's see what we can do. And now all of a sudden they're like, grabbing all their volunteers saying, go talk to Rudi because he wants to help us and we want to make sure this is a success. There have been times that what we give to nonprofits, which are just kind of like a buy it now, donate 100, get this type of thing, where we've raised more money than their entire silent auction because we've worked with them in a way that they're like, okay, funnel everyone over there. And then the next year they're like, Rudi, we love your ideas. What can we do next year? And so that's really, again, coming back to the relationship of how can we help them. And we're really very much seen as a very philanthropic organization in our community.
I think that's great because in general, people are like, oh, yeah, I'll just donate something to the silent auction. And then there's no real involvement. And that's like the so minimalistic end. And people that are there in the crowd, are they going to remember you or not, with the 50 other items that are there. So this is great to see that you take it that next layer, the next step, because nonprofits have been huge for us. And the
other thing too is the more you work with them, the more they're likely to give you microphone time too. Yeah. So they're like, you know what, we're going to bring Clark and Rudi up here because they've been doing this over here, which is just an amazing thing to where we're hoping to raise $2,500 tonight. And so then they're like, Clark, tell a little about this and why you do this. and then you get to talk, and which is really seen now as an expert in the community, that people are seeing you all the time. And now we have people, in fact, I just gave a tour today to 40 people in a leadership class, and they're all like, thank you for how much you give to our community. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we see you at every auction and all of this. And I'm like, no, we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
So.
And just by being that authority figure now, it's very much positioning, and now they're looking at you like, if you're giving to the community, they just naturally want to give back. You know,
exactly.
Reciprocation. Yeah.
And it opens you up to relationships then with other influential people.
Right.
I can go to any of these events, and I'm on a first name basis with our mayor, where I can talk to him, and he's like, thank you for what you're doing tonight for us. And I'm like, oh, Mayor Hannell, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
And then I talk to him, I'm like, when are the kids coming back in town? You know, we haven't done a family portrait in a while. He goes, I know, that's on our mind. And so it's all of those things, even to car dealership owners and other people who when you first get into this business, you're like, oh, they're totally untouchable to me. I can't relate to them. And now all of a sudden we're in that circle to where they're like, Rudi, we'd like you to sit at the VIP table tonight.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And again, but this is relationship building, and this is a marathon. Like I think a lot, because for us, it's like we layered in, and it took us a couple years to, you know, we go right out the gate. It shows very shallow.
Exactly.
Like
it's a slow process, and as you have successes with nonprofits and they see how much money you've raised for them or what you're willing to do and how much you're wanting to help them, these nonprofits talk. And so then they're like, you know what, you should talk to the Martens, because they're out to help as many people as they can. Now, one thing I want to caution is I'm not giving the farm away. I obviously in the back of my head have a strategy where I'm like, okay, they'll purchase this. I'm hoping they purchase more, but I'm not giving it to where I'm going to get totally burned on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think it's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, because we're constantly talking about within our audience as well about nonprofit, because that 10 years ago I was on top of the world with my real estate company and then lost everything suddenly after family, you know, took money out of the company without me knowing. And how I rebuilt my life was I went right after the nonprofits, because I knew that's where because I was one of those influencers before in these $300, $400, $500 plate dinners. And I knew that's the avatar that I wanted to go after, because they're, again, discretionary income and that they can spend is at a different level, you know. And so I'm right there. That speaking our language.
I love that you said avatar. That's totally, I'm like, oh, I know what book they're reading.
Exactly, right? So do you have a success ritual or something you do on a daily basis that you think contributes to your success?
What, a successful tool, is that what you said?
Success ritual, or like a daily routine or anything like that?
So more and more it has been actually physical calendars and physical boards where it's not hidden in the computer. So I see the numbers every single day. After this, I'm sitting down in a meeting with my mom, and we have an actual desk calendar, one of those like 2.5 by 2 foot ones that we're putting sticky notes on saying, okay, the beginning of the year, this is our revenue goal. We're working backwards. This is how many leads. And then for that, what do we have to do to get those leads? And so we wrote out strategies for all of those. And too often, I think, again, that is like, oh, awesome, that looks great. Close the journal, and we keep moving on. Where now we've taken a sticky note for each one of those things and sticking it on the calendar, physical calendar, to go, okay, this is due at this time, this has to happen at this time. So that in the last year has been probably the best ritual that we do. The other one then is probably making to-do lists the night before. And because as we all know, the mornings just fly by unless you have a plan for it.
So true. So true.
And that's great, because you can hide from the computer and not purposely look at your calendar. So to have it, we're very visual. So to see things actually mapped out. You know,
well, here, I mean, I'll even show you. I mean, this is right next to my desk. This is auctions.
Nice.
Here, I've got it totally. If this was just in the computer, I wouldn't have near enough a good idea of what the pulse is going.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally makes sense.
That's great. That's great to see that.
And then what about business tools? Is there any business tools or resources that you use that you really can't live without in your business?
Books.
Books.
We're constantly reading, we're constantly learning. And as far as a business tool, it's not like I can't say this certain planner or this software. Yeah, we use all that stuff, but I would say just a relentless pursuit of business and mindset or thought process of we have to be on purpose of what we're accomplishing, because if we don't have a purpose for it or we don't have a plan, we're going to fall into somebody else's plan, and that plan for them is designed for their benefit, not necessarily for mine.
Yeah. And you already mentioned E-Myth. Is there any other books that you just absolutely love?
Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson is a new favorite of mine. .com Secrets also by him. Now those obviously, as you know, talk about online strategies, but they can all be shifted into a photography studio. I was totally mesmerized by both of those.
Yeah.
Millionaire Mindset by T. Harv Eckert is a great one on thinking. I think right now we're seeing a great shift in our industry of moving away from the shiny object and now going, okay, what is the purpose of why are we doing this? Yeah. It's not necessarily to just have fun, but now to create an income. And we're moving and seeing that pendulum come back into business and marketing, and now thought process and how we think of, are we worthy of it? Can we charge what we want to charge? In that mindset, that's really empowering to see that we're seeing that shift in our industry.
Nice.
Excellent.
Definitely add those to the list. So if you haven't read them already, we've read a couple of them. But so last but not least, what are you working on now, and how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So we referenced that we do coach. We have about 100 studios around the nation that we coach. It is very one-on-one, where we line up, what are your goals? Okay, this is what we need to do to get there, and come alongside people. If people want to know more about that, they can go to successinphotography.com and just get on that email list. As far as business, you know, when we said that we were going to partner on coaching with David Hilton, my number one thing I said was, that's fine, we can do that. I want to help people, but I will not be that person who allows the studio to drop down. And we're coaching other people, but we have nothing to prove that it's working or not. And so my mom has kind of taken the role of coaching, where I've been, okay, keep the studio building, keep it going. And so a lot of online strategies we're going to be rolling out here shortly. I think there's always so much that changes all the time. The new Facebook Messenger bot and things like that is once again working its way into the relationship and communication with people in a very busy and hectic world. It's always, okay, what's next? How can we get closer and continue to develop out those? I think other strategies you'll see that we're perfecting are what I call indoctrination emails. My assistant hates it that I call it indoctrination. She goes, that sounds horrible. I'm like, well, I'm just trying to help them understand why we believe what we do believe about our work, and helping them fall in love with that process, so that when they get to the end of that story that I'm telling, that they're like, these people are amazing, and I love what they do for the community, and I love their work. I want this. I cannot think about going to any other photographer because I've fallen in love with these people. And so those are things we're working on this year too.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is so
You're
awesome.
Just speaking our language.
I know.
We could spend hours.
I know, really. Thank you so much, Rudi. We really appreciate it. I mean, you've shared so much information here, and just a different perspective for people to really, again, I think the biggest takeaway is know your numbers, and kind of, you know, pushing everything else aside and getting down and dirty with that non-sexy part. But like you said, it's so important, because that's going to help you build that life, like you said, that you really desire.
Absolutely. And I don't want to diminish photography or the art of it at all. That is very important. And you have to have a passion and even take on personal projects that keep that passion going. But to understand also that this passion is a hobby until we have a plan and know the numbers to create a business out of it that is profitable for us. I forgot who it was I was listening to. It could have been Brendan Burchard or something. And they were sharing that no, it was Darren Daly, that's who it was. And he said most people know more about the statistics of their favorite sports star than they know about their own life or about their own business. Wow. They can tell you how many yards this person ran, or what the batting whatever is for this person, and all of that stuff. But then when you say, well, how many leads do you have to get to the 7 appointments you want this week? They're like, I have no idea. Are we going to get to 7 appointments this week? I don't know. I hope so.
Great.
And so knowing that is so important, as unsexy as it is. But if you change that mindset of going, you know what? Okay, I'm that sports star. Let's just start doing statistics on myself and celebrating that. Then it becomes a fun game again.
That's awesome.
That's all.
I love
That's
that.
great. That's
I love
great
that.
attitude.
Well, thank you so much. We so appreciate your time and appreciate everything that you've talked about today. So
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Talk Talks, sponsored by Photographer Entrepreneurs Association. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the association, go to photographerentrepreneur.com to learn more about photography business resources, templates, training, and support. We'll see you over there.